I'll put it bluntly, being an AI expert and understanding how to use these AI tools to genuinely get work done in a business quicker, and for small to medium businesses or enterprise drive return on investment, is arguably one of the most, if not the most valuable skill in 2026. What I'm going to do in this video, as somebody who runs an agent and is doing this for businesses, genuinely finding millions of dollars in savings, and that's real, I'm going to break down exactly the skills that you need to become an AI expert, how you can do it, and then how you can go ahead and use these skills to generate return on investment for businesses, which in turn is where you then price your own product to make money. So what I'm going to cover in this video is, first off, I'm going to cover there's 3 fundamental skills, in my opinion, that you need to have first before you really understand how to deliver these solutions for businesses. So I'll break down each of those 3 skills. Number 1, pretty common sense, is the fundamentals of these AI tools. So I'm going to put number 1 here, and I'm going to put AI tools. Now, the most common tools, the one that we currently implement for businesses is Claude, but Codex is a very popular one. Just an understanding of how to navigate, and in my opinion, the desktop app. So I'm going to put Claude and Codex down here. But it's not just being able to use these tools, it's actually being able to navigate, and in my opinion, the desktop app. Now, why do I say the desktop app? Well, because the desktop app is custom built by these companies to remove a lot of the complexity of setting up some of the key fundamental concepts that actually make AI usable for businesses. What are these concepts? Well, some of these concepts include MCPs. Now, what are MCPs? It's essentially a way for businesses to connect their tools together. We're talking their CRM systems, their document signing systems, their sales management systems, whatever the case is. They can simply and really easily connect these tools to the desktop app, Claude Desktop or Codex, and they can pull that data in. Now, why is that useful? Well, in order to create all of the automations or the AI workflows that we're going to use later down the line, the key layer beneath all of that is context and the business's data. Because if we want to go ahead and, for example, build prospects for a company and source leads, we need to understand what their ideal customer profile is. We call that context. If we want to generate proposals, we need to understand the nature of the deal and all this other information. That's more context. So every automation that we build, the more context that we have, which is data, that's what actually enables us to build accurate automations. The current way of pulling that in, or the most common and easiest way to set that up, is through MCPs. So we need to have an understanding of MCPs. We need a basic understanding of the models and how they work and how to actually talk to these AI tools. And I'll cover this in a little bit more detail, but just a basic understanding of, the real fundamentals of talking, prompt engineering, how to connect different, even MCPs, to be able to get more out of your prompts. So we need a basic understanding of that. Now, I used to say you needed to understand an IDE, but now you can operate Claude Code, or you can operate these workflows entirely in the desktop app. And that's why I recommend that over using something like VS Code, Anti-Gravity, or Cursor. So really, we need an understanding of MCPs, we need an understanding of the models, we need an understanding of the interface. Now, what do I mean interface? I'm going to use Claude as an example because that's what we recommend. Within Claude, we have all these different tools. We have what we call live artifacts. Now, what are these? This is just a fancy term for being able to generate pretty much websites instantly. And the kind of cases we have here for businesses is being able to build reports. So reporting and visualization of data is really important for businesses. It's how they can, track active costs on a project. They can build reports for profit and loss. They can understand when they're losing money, when they're winning money, how efficient certain staff members are, et cetera, et cetera. That's all data compiled into nice reports. And Live Artifacts allows us to do that with the MCPs that we've connected really, really easily. Prior to this, companies had to use tools like Power BI that took a lot longer to set these things up. We can do it entirely with natural language using live artifacts. Again, saving time, increasing visibility, and if done correctly, generating a lot of value for businesses. That's just one. Another one's scheduled workflows. Being able to set up, for example, an email triage every morning at 6 a.m. Maybe we're setting up, and this will differ by staff members, maybe we're sending up some sort of process where every single morning it looks at all of the emails from potential suppliers, or maybe it emails leads every single afternoon. It can be anything, really any AI workflow that's repetitive, that's automatically scheduled and executed. That's just another part of the Claude interface that's built natively within it. And this includes everything else from just being able to manage the chat windows, everything like that. I've got plenty of videos of me in the interface. But in essence, that's skill number one, is literally downloading the tool and being familiar with chat and the interface and how it works. We used to have chat, cowork, and code as the different products by Claude. They all do a very similar thing at the end of the day, but understanding the distinctions between each one and how to use them, that's skill number one. And if you want to become an AI expert and be able to implement this for businesses, you need to understand this and stay up to date, because it changes and updates itself regularly. Now, number two is what I call data organization, but it in a lot of cases is folder structure. Now, what do I miss? Well, every time we run a workflow, or not every time, but most of the time, we can break down any sort of automation into three things. It's a list of inputs, some sort of automational process which has rules, and a list of outputs. And this is going to lead me into number three, but I'll talk about that in a moment. Now, when I say inputs, I talk about what do we need, what's a standardized data format for some sort of automation that a business is going to use. I'm going to use the example of generating a proposal. Any business generating a proposal to win some work. Now, when we talk about inputs, the inputs for that could potentially be the company's pricing details, so that if you sell a number of products, you have a pricing list of what those products are. That would be an input which we would need in order to generate some sort of accurate proposal. Now, we can go a step further there and say that could be an Excel sheet which has different columns, such as the price, the currency, the quantity of items, maybe some sort of SKU, whatever the case is. But in general, the more granular we can define inputs, so file type, how the data is actually structured, the more consistent we can get it, the more reliable it is that we can then build a transformational process and understand what sort of we're being fed. So in the inputs, we've got brand guidelines, we've got whatever we need. It changes depending on the workflow, but we want to clearly define what the inputs are. Then we have a transformational process. And this is actually, at the end of the day, a list of rules. But, and I'll talk about this in a moment, actually extracting this for a business is a lot harder than it initially seems. If we take the case of generating a proposal, a business might have all sorts of rules that they employ when they're building the process that a human might be manually doing. For example, maybe for smaller products, so let's say we're talking about a e-commerce business, and for any product they sell that's under $200, they have and realistically, most companies probably aren't sending a proposal for any product under $200, but let's just hypothetically say that they are. Maybe they keep it really basic, just one page, because it's a small product and it's not worth investing the extra time to generate a bigger proposal. It's just not necessary. But for larger products, $10,000 plus, there's extra detail in that proposal. Now, that is just one example of a business rule that's in somebody's head, but there would be a million other ones. Maybe they have some sort of policy that they add on certain products, or maybe there's different product images that they add based on the different product. These are all rules, and they need to be defined in that transformational process granularly in order for an AI to execute this task accurately. Number three is then your outputs. Now, when I come to outputs, I'm not just talking about the file type. So maybe we're exporting a PDF, maybe that PDF is formatted in some sort of template, but I'm also talking about the location. And this is relevant to the inputs as well. Often what will happen is companies might have some sort of drive. Maybe that's a Google Drive folder, maybe that's local on your computer, or maybe that is in SharePoint. We also want to define where this data is. So when we want the inputs, how are we giving them to the AI? Are we just dragging and dropping them in a conversation? Are we searching in a specific folder? And then when we get the output, where's that going? Are we just returning it in the conversation? Are we putting it in a specific folder? What's happening? And what is really important, especially for smaller individuals who are using this personally, is understanding how to actually organize your folders in a way that it's easy for an AI to know where to go looking for your data. This gets a lot more complicated. There's a lot we can do here, but in general, this is the second step. So once you understand basic chat, the second step is understanding how to actually store information and data, and being able to provide that and organize that in a way that's not only easy for you, but easy for an AI to understand where it needs to go to get certain things. And also how to set up, and this kind of ties into prompt engineering as well, but also leads into this third skill. The third skill is the development of plugins and skills. Now, this is really just understanding the terminology, but whenever we have some sort of repetitive process, now Claude has defined this as plugin and skills, that's the terminology. But what does this really mean? Well, really, it's actually the process of converting what we call a standard operating procedure, or an SOP, into an AI workflow. So anything in a business can be broken down into a standard operating procedure. The creation of proposals, the processing of purchase orders, the creation of a tax invoice, the outreach to a specific lead or prospect. There's all these different tasks happening in a business, and at the end of the day, they can be broken down into a list of inputs. Where do we get the data that we need to actually perform this task? What are all the business rules or the transformational processes involved in completing that? And then what is the output and where does that actually live? Once we understand that in granular detail, we can, instead of having to explain that to an AI every single time we want to do it, we can build what's called a plugin or a skill, which actually bundles a lot of these concepts that we had over here into a process that's repeatable and can be shared with team members. So that if we have a plugin, for example, that is handling the proposal process, you can have somebody build that understands all of this, but then they can share it with their entire team that can basically access it directly in chat, and they don't need to understand step 2 and 3 because it's already programmed for them in the plugin or skill. And so these are the 3 core skills that are required to become an AI expert in 2026. Because if you understand how to do each of these 3 things, at the end of the day, everything is essentially a combination of these 3 skills. Now, the last thing that I'll probably include in here is a 4th skill if you want to go ahead and do this for other people. Now, if you want to do it personally, you don't really need this 4th skill, although I still think you do. The 4th one is actually, I would call it communication or articulation and communication. Now you're probably like, why is that relevant? Well, at the end of the day, there's actually a lot of people that do these SOPs or they execute tasks in their business every single day, but when it comes to articulating exactly how they do it and why they make certain decisions, that often needs to actually be granularly extracted from people in a way that's explained to a 5-year-old. And whilst that sounds really stupid, there's actually quite a bit of articulation skill, being able to analyze why you make certain decisions in your job every single day, and also being able to standardize inputs and outputs. So particular processes, a lot of time people say, hey, no, you can't build an AI workflow for this because it's too unpredictable and it needs a human. That in 95% of cases is not true. What's happening is that somebody hasn't really taken the time to really think through the process and say, hey, is there some way that we can actually standardize this list of inputs into a predictable format? Then what are the actual transformational processes? What is the knowledge that I have in my subconscious that allows me to accurately complete this task and make certain decisions to get to an output? And then what is the output and where does it need to go? And that comes down, if you're going to do this for clients, then you need to be able to granularly ask people and really extract this information out of them, which can be difficult because they'll often use a lot of lingo and they've often been in the industry for 10 to 20 years, and actually taking it that step backwards to explain it to somebody that's never done something before requires a little bit of an art and some communication skills. So at the end of the day, if you want to become an AI expert in 2026, these are the 4 things you need to be able to do. And I'll go a step further and I'll give you my recommendation on how you can learn these things. Regarding the AI tools, these are updating very, very regularly. So whilst there's a lot of good resources out there, there also needs to be some sort of thing from yourself, because there's a good deal that if you're watching something that's over 1 or 2 months old, there's a good chance that it may be slightly outdated. So some of the key places you can go to do this, I'm quite heavily on Team Claude at this point in time, but I'm fully aware that that could change at any point. And these 3 fundamental skills are model agnostic in that the general concepts here, it doesn't matter what model you're using, whether it's Claude, Codex, or anything else in the future, this will all still apply. But in my opinion, Claude actually has courses and public materials that you can learn, and I would probably start there just to understand. They're going to keep that up to date and quite modern, so I'd recommend starting there for some materials. Number 2, honestly, is YouTube. Now, I'm also going to say that obviously I've got plenty of videos on my channel talking about the technical skills and also the softer skills on how to actually sell this and make it useful to businesses. But there's a lot of other good creators out there. If you want to join my weekly Q&As, you can join the AI Builders Hub as well, completely free on School. But that's a good spot to start as well. And then number 3 is actually going ahead and building your own personal skills. Now, whilst here, I think in the mindset of being able to provide this for small to medium businesses, at the end of the day, if you can do this for yourself, now if you're a freelancer or you're someone who, even at work, there's probably a lot of workflows in here that you can start to automate out of your own job, whether that's you're employed with someone else or whether you're working for yourself. It's probably a lot of repetitive tasks that you do in your own life, maybe even personally and not work related. That's going to be the perfect practice ground for you to go ahead and build some plugins and skills and put all of this knowledge into execution. So if you can do it for yourself, it's not going to be that much of a step to go ahead and do it for small to medium businesses or anybody else. So I would say build for yourself first, and then you can go ahead and start to build for other people. And the cool thing about this is that you don't need a university degree, and you can learn these skills entirely online and pretty quickly as well if you're willing to jump headfirst into it. It's also getting less and less technical as the time goes past. If you'd come to me a year or two ago building some of the automations, I would say I would have told you it's probably 80% technical and 20% softer skills. These days, I would say that the technical piece is 20 to 30% of the entire build, and that's getting smaller as time goes past. The real skill is understanding business processes. And again, these three things at the top here, these are the real skills. Now, the last thing I'll touch on, and I've got plenty of other videos on how we price our services at APG Software, but I'll talk about just really briefly how you can actually monetize these skills. Now, if you're an employee and you're at a workplace, well, this is going to help you get things that you do in your regular job or day-to-day get done 40 to 80% quicker. What you do in that spare time is up to you. You could use it to go and lounge on the couch and catch up on some Netflix shows, or you could use it to go ahead and start freelancing for other businesses or potentially take some initiatives within your own company. If you're looking to freelance or to start an agency, then it's pretty simple. All of the time savings that we're achieving through these AI automations, we have a two-step process at APG Software, but the initial thing is to basically scope out with the business and figure out how long a specific process currently takes. In knowing that, we can then quantify and estimate exactly what it costs just by taking the estimated hourly wage of your specific country. So let's say, for example, that a current proposal process takes on average 20 hours. Now, I'm using a very simple use case here, and I've got other videos that go much more into detail on how we do this, but the general concept is, let's say it takes 20 hours a week. And so over a year, that's going to be 52 times 20, which is roughly $10,000. Excuse my math if that's wrong. From there, this is assuming a $50 an hour hourly wage. So from there, sorry, that's roughly $1,000 a week. I think it's $5,000 a year. But on average, we can then go back to a company and we can say, hey, let's say, for example, it would take us 20 hours to build this skill. We can then price in and say, hey, we can build this for $2,000 basis, which is going to be less than 6 months of your existing operational waste. And it'll bring this down to, like, let's say 2 hours a week, because at the end of the day, a human still, at least for now, in most cases, a human is still executing these skills, just helping them get things done 40 to 80% quicker. Now, I've skipped a lot here. If you want to watch me go really into detail on exactly how we do it, I've got another video on how we run our audits and then how we actually maintain a client engagement from there. But in general, this is a brief overview because a lot of people ask me, hey, what's the best thing to be freelancing in, or best skills that I should be learning right now? How do I get a part of this wave? It's these three things up the top here. So just to summarize, number one, get familiar with an AI tool. I would recommend downloading Claude, going ahead, getting familiar with Cowork and Code, but just in the Claude desktop app, if you can master that, that's all you need. Connecting a couple of the existing tools that you use, building a live artifact or two, building a scheduled workflow to just solve a couple of basic problems. Number two is really just working in it and understanding how to lay out your folders. You can build a little personal operating system is a popular use case right now. Building a couple of MD files, understanding how to organize those folders. Then number three is understanding how to actually build these workflows, or what they call plugins and skills, and how to actually convert some sort of operating procedure or business process into a plugin and skill. With those, you then have, I would genuinely call you an AI expert if you can do these three things correctly and understand what you're actually doing. If you wanted to then go ahead and start selling this to businesses, those articulation and communication skills and being able to actually understand business processes and translate that knowledge, which is these three things over here, onto paper and articulate it very concisely. You then have all of the skills to go ahead and either implement this personally or approach small to medium businesses, find some sort of niche problem, build some sort of to solve it, and then basically quantify and sell that to businesses based on how much money they're going to save. Hope you found this video useful, and if you want to see more of this or more of what we're doing at the agency, feel free to subscribe. Feel free to jump into the AI Builders Hub, which is completely free. You can come and talk to me and ask me questions. I do weekly Q&As. Thanks.